Welcome to the Business Miracles Podcast. I'm Heather Dominick, founder of BusinessMiracles.com. Since 2010, I've been training highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders from around the globe to work less while making more impact and income by doing things differently. I'm so glad you've joined me. Listen in and get ready for a shift in the way you view yourself, your work, your life. A business miracle. This is A Course in Business Miracles, episode number 111, Inside Highly Sensitive Leadership, with Buteyko breathing practitioner Brian Murphy. Welcome to this special series of the Business Miracles podcast, Inside Highly Sensitive Leadership, where you'll be hearing real stories from real highly sensitives creating real success. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to spend some time talking to Business Miracles community member and highly sensitive leader, Brian Murphy. This was a really touching conversation. I even got a bit emotional, and a unique opportunity to hear from a highly sensitive leader who also happens to be a man and a father, as well as a talented practitioner and teacher. I invite you to listen in as I talk with Brian to hear how, before he joined the Business Miracles community and highly sensitive leadership training program, he was really overwhelmed with raising 2 young children, starting his own business, while also supporting his partner in her business and beginning to navigate what it means to be highly sensitive. Since joining the program, Brian has been able to learn how to honor himself and his highly sensitive strengths, all to support building better relationships with both his family and his clients. In addition to being a valued member of the Business Miracles community and highly sensitive leadership training programs, Brian is a Buteyko breathing practitioner and completed an honors degree in English literature and Irish language in Trinity College Dublin in 2000. In 2003, he qualified as a primary school teacher in Ireland and is a trained facilitator of groups and has studied personal development courses continuously since 2009. In 2015, he trained as a Buteyko breathing practitioner and has been teaching healthy breathing to people of all ages, from 5 years old to elderly clients. Brian has been self-employed since 2015, but also still teaches part-time in primary schools. Again, this was a touching conversation, and I'm honored to invite you to listen in. Enjoy. Brian, welcome to the Business Miracles podcast and Inside Highly Sensitive Leadership.
Oh, hi, Heather. How are you?
I am so good, and I am just really, really delighted to be having this conversation with you. First of all, I just always love when I have the opportunity to just connect in more deeply with any of the members of the Business Miracles community. And I especially am just really looking forward to this conversation because I'm just such an admirer of the work that you've done in the highly sensitive leadership training program and just the work that you do in the world in general. So let's dive in. And why don't we start by having you share just a little bit about, what was going on in your life, in your world, in your work when you and I first connected.
Okay, yeah, wow. First of all, thank you for that, for sharing about how you respect what I do and the work I'm doing. So yeah, when I first connected with you, Heather, it was actually through a podcast I was listening to. Kim Sutton was the name of the podcast. And I listened to her podcast and I listened to you and I was like, wow, this person is literally describing everything about challenges I face on a day-to-day basis. So at that time in my life, I had, I suppose, really gone seriously into being self-employed and being an entrepreneur. I'd taken a huge step a year before that, investing into a business with my partner, Lauren. And we had gone on a big trip to Thailand, and it was in the area of personal development. But I was also running my own personal business in the area of breath work. And we have 2 children, 2 boys. It was just a time of massive change for me, massive decision making. I was just turning 40. It was like now or never. I need to step up and do something really different if I'm going to make a change. Prior to that, I'd always worked as a primary school teacher and have done many different trainings in many different areas. But I saw just the opportunity to really go for something in the area of personal development, which is a massive passion of mine, personal growth, and in the area of breath work, and how this was something that could really help the world and help people, and was a very clear, service that was needed not right now. And this was the exciting part of it, was the making the massive decision. The exciting part was, yes, we're going to really go for this. And then there was the realities of the challenges of having two children, a long-term relationship, and also juggling two businesses. And it was huge. Like, I mean, I can't even describe in the space of 12 months prior to listening to that podcast with Kim Sutton and hearing you for the first time, how much my life had changed. But I was finding it very challenging because I was doing just so much in so many different areas. And I was aware that this was not exactly where I wanted to be when it came to me energetically every day. But I was like so excited at the same time because I was like, I'm really going for this. I was proud of myself to have the courage to do it. But when it came to the logistics, I was struggling, I have to say, in a lot of ways because I was taking on too much, I think. And
Yeah.
when I heard you speak, I was like, this person is literally describing my life experience right now. And
Mm.
so that was about a year and a half ago. And everything you talked about being highly sensitive ticked all of the boxes for where I'd seen myself, all of those patterns of like different patterns of behavior throughout my life up until then. And I really resonated with your call. And very shortly after that, I enrolled to the program. And
Yes.
so that's where I was at that
Yes.
point.
Amazing. And I remember your enrollment process very, very well. And I know that it was a really big deal for you to step into the highly sensitive leadership training programs. And one of the things that you and I were talking about before this podcast conversation is the tendency for those of us who are highly sensitive to over certify ourselves, that
Yes.
we are a very educated bunch. We have a lot of degrees. We have a lot of certifications. We've attended a lot of trainings, and I definitely am in that category myself. And then there comes a point where you have to kind of reckon, like, what is this over certifying about? And so I'd love if you could talk about that a little bit in that moment when you did decide to step into the highly sensitive leadership training. And yeah, just that, I'm going to hand it over to you. What was that moment like for you?
Well, first of all, it was a huge decision at the time because I think it was like June, late May, June of the summer of 2019, I think. So
Yes,
that would be right.
June
Yeah. And
2019 it
yes,
was.
I was like, I'm going to be doing another course, another program. I'm going to be enrolling in another program. I was like, haven't I done enough programs? But something resonated really powerfully for me about, the teachings that I'd heard from you prior to enrolling. I listened to all of your podcasts. I don't know if you know that.
No, but I'm so glad you did. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think so from hearing you originally on the Kim Sutton podcast to actually enrolling, there was a space of maybe wasn't even maybe 14 days, but I listened to every pod. I was immersed myself
That's awesome,
in that way.
Brian.
You say that, like, highly sensitive people have that tendency, that love for learning and a passion for learning.
Yes.
So it was a huge decision because I had prior to that, a year before, I had, invested hugely in my business, my joint business with Lauren, and I was also working extremely hard, the breath work. So to be part of another program, it was a huge decision. I'll never forget my enrollment call with Coach Debbie, or my two enrollment calls probably. And
Yes.
yeah, I am just so glad that I made that decision though, that I
Yeah.
actually had the courage at that, because it wasn't an easy one for me to make, but it was the right decision.
Well, I appreciate this story again for so many reasons. One, just that, it's just something that's so common for those of us who are highly sensitive, that over certification, but also because you are definitely not the first highly sensitive who's told me how difficult the decision was, but how at the same time you could tell that this program was going to be different. And you would think, like, being able to really intuitively know that this program would be different would make it easier. But in truth, what I've really seen for a lot of people, and I don't know, you can tell me if this is the same for you, it actually makes it harder, because you know that things are going to change, and you know that you're going to have to actually let go of some of the ways that you've coped, up until this point. So it becomes this courageous act, because change is going to happen. And then there's a question of, will I be able to handle things in my life, in my business, in my work actually becoming easier? Right? I'm going to have to let go of an identity in a way that I've had for a long time. So I don't know if maybe you could talk about that, and maybe what, how things have changed for you, for your work, and, also your relationships, anything that you'd like to share there.
Well, I mean, there's been so many massive shifts. I suppose, first of all, I would say, to really, simplify it down, to actually own the fact that I am highly sensitive as a male, and
Yes.
to stand in that total and utter understanding of this is a reality of my day-to-day life. And I never even heard of what the idea of highly sensitive was
Yes.
until the summer prior. It was the summer of 2018. I went to a conference in Ireland, in Cork in Ireland. It was Dr. Gabor Mate. I've spoken to you about this before.
Yes.
And he's a Canadian doctor who's an expert in trauma studies and people who've had trauma in their early life and how that affects addiction. He's written some amazing books. He's a truly inspirational person to be in a room with. Like, there was about, I don't know, 250, 300 people in the room, but he just was just an amazing day with him. I just never forget it. But he was the first person who ever mentioned anything about being highly sensitive as being, a fact of certain people are highly sensitive.
Yes.
So because I'd heard that before, and I'd heard him say it, I was like, oh, I've heard about this before, this highly sensitive. And just when I saw all of the different, aspects of what go into being highly sensitive, I literally, like, I'm super uber, like, I ticked all of the boxes. Like,
Yeah.
I did this, I ended up super uber,
Yes. Me too.
like, highly sensitive. And it was just like, oh, wow, everything made so much more sense to me. But it wasn't, I mean, I think it actually wasn't that difficult for me to actually own that as a man at this point in my life. But it would have been 5 years ago. And it
Yes.
would have been 10 years ago, because it would have been just so kind of like out of the norm to say, okay, I'm a man, but I'm highly sensitive. But if anyone who knows me would probably say, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's you. But it was for me to actually be okay. So that was the
Right.
first thing that was really powerful for me. And then also, just, I suppose, to go into a community which is there is more females obviously than males in this
Yes,
community.
there are. Yes.
Now I have a bit of experience in that, because I've worked as a primary school teacher all my life prior to being
Right.
self-employed. So that's
Right.
always a female dominated environment.
I never made
80%.
that connection before. Of course. Yes.
Yeah. So that wasn't really a big deal for me. That's 80-20 in Ireland, like, would be kind of 20% male, maybe about 30-70 now. But it's a lot more females in the primary school education. That's the staff rooms I've worked in.
Right.
So they were the two big things for me, like, just to own that kind of, like, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm a guy. I'm highly sensitive, but I'm going to be in a program with all of these lady women and ladies, and it's great and it's okay. And I'm going to be just okay with that.
That's
And I'm going to
awesome.
end up going to training retreats, and there's going to be maybe one or two other men there, but it's
Yes.
going to be, and I just think, like Lauren, my long-term partner, Lauren, was just like, yeah, she's cool with that. She knows, she's known I've been highly sensitive probably since the first night we met. So that's just where I was at with those two things. But for me, I think just what comes into my mind right now is it was the first time in my life that I realized that I was supported in a way that I was understood. I always had these issues with being, no one understands me kind of thing.
Yes. Yes.
We're
Yes.
completely understood in this community. And I was like, and then there was, so when you kind of add in the consistency of the trainings and the consistency of showing up to use the tools that are provided in the trainings,
Yes.
that it gave me this kind of place where I knew it wasn't a short term, okay, you need to get success in the next 6 weeks or else, you've failed. It was like,
Right.
no, this is a long term consistent support. And that was new for me, because
Ah,
that was very new for me to feel like, I don't, there's a word I'm searching for, but it's like to feel like I was going to be, supported. And oh yeah, I think it was also just to really feel like people genuinely understood and wanted the best from me, understood me and also wanted the best
yes.
from me.
Yes.
I
Oh my
wasn't
gosh.
just,
I'm
yeah.
like, my heart is like just opening so wide. I'm so thrilled to know that that's your experience, because that is everything that I hold as a value and a high intention for the work that we do in the community. That, every member is really treated as an individual, and that there really is so much that goes into ensuring that each person, each member is on their, best outcome path. So I so appreciate hearing that. And I really appreciate you speaking to, the process as a male, because I know that that is a big deal. And there's cultural and societal hurdles that any of us who are highly sensitive have to overcome, which is part of the work that we do in the training programs to really own our sensitivity, as a strength, as a superpower that we can use within, any sense of entrepreneurialism and leadership. And those hurdles are that much greater for males in our current culture and society. And I hope to see that change. And I look to you, as one of the leaders to really pave that way for other highly sensitive males. And doing a great job so far. I'd love to hear about how it's impacted, how being a part of the training programs and the community has impacted things for you, your business, but also, if you're willing to share about your relationship. You've mentioned Lauren more than once. I've never met her, but I feel like I know her, because I know that the two of you work so closely and you hold your partnership with her in such a space of regard and honor, which is, very admirable and so beautiful to see. And then also your children. So anything that, you'd be willing to share and let us in on an inside scoop about what's changed in those important areas for yourself.
Yeah, it's been really huge relationship wise what's changed. And I remember a friend of mine who was a yoga teacher years ago saying, the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. So start with that.
Right.
So this program has helped me really by honoring myself just for who I am and honoring my nervous system. It's
Yes.
helped me to understand myself and also accept myself better.
Yes.
And then just be really more honest with myself, like really more honest, in a way that, I would have said, oh yeah, I've always thought, yeah, I'm pretty on, I'm an honest guy, but it was like, this was like being really honest about how I really feel, what I need, what
Right.
my values are.
Yes.
And it's a daily process for me because it starts with the energy management. So when I'm honoring myself and I'm honoring my own energy, my values, all I want from life, then I'm having better outcomes in my relationship or better relationships. It's now
That's right.
it's been a massive shift of growth, like, because I've had to admit that, there's scars there from past kind of experiences, that
Right.
I've actually faced into, especially in the last 6 months to a year since the pandemic. I think brought up a lot of stuff for everybody, really, in the world.
Yeah, true.
So also, so much of the teachings is about that kind of self-empowerment, and also about letting go of negative guilt and shame. And I would have had a lot of that in my interactions with people without realizing it. I was holding on to a lot of unnecessary guilt.
Ah,
And
yes.
and what I realize now, it's a daily challenge just to stay, in the Course in Miracles teaching, just host. Are you going to be hostage to the ego, or host to the Holy Spirit every day?
Right.
And it's like, and with my children, my two sons, it's just a daily process of remembering to forgive myself if I ever say something or get cross with them, when I might feel guilty about that or something. But also going back to my energy management, and what do I want as a father? How do I want to bring up my children? How do I want to influence their lives? And with Lauren as well, for me, I think the biggest thing with my personal relationship with Lauren is there's an honesty in our relationship that is just way on a different level than what it would have been 2 or 3 years ago. And
Wow.
it's
Wow.
just this deep honesty of, like, we just have to read. It's like there's just no room not to be 100% honest with each other anymore, because too much has been invested into this,
Right.
in every way, like, too much is invested. So
Yes. Wow. This is amazing, Brian. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's really so beautiful and so powerful. I have chills as I'm listening to you, because what you're sharing is a demonstration of, especially again, as a male, when you are willing to accept who you are as a person who's highly sensitive, to embrace that, and then to really bring that into all areas of your life. And what I'm hearing you describe is how you are then able to, as a result, have like this deeper, more honest, like you said, connection and partnership. And then also how you're able to be more present and honest as a father. And my gosh, I don't know if I can think of anything else that's like more valuable, for each of us in our experiences and lives, if we're, if we're just totally grateful that we can have that. And then, of course, then that naturally translates into the work, the business, and the ways that you're here to serve, and the clients that you're here to serve. And I think why I also really appreciate hearing this from you is because, again, especially as a male, I'm sorry to keep harping on that.
yeah.
But, the other 80%, it's so like a stereotypical compartmentalization approach, right? It's like the relationship and the kids are at home and the work is at the office, and the two do not intersect. But we don't work well as highly sensitives in compartmentalization. It's all connected because our nervous system is just, stimulated by every interaction we have. So
Yes.
how beautiful to be able to have it fully, overlap and interweave, but in a positive way, rather than staying in that shame and guilt that you were talking about. And then, the unfortunate way that the shame and guilt would then impact something like your primary relationship and relationship with your children. It's just so beautiful to hear you talk about having the opposite experience. I'm just so happy.
Can I just add something about that? That's really a real life example that happened
Please.
right today.
Yes.
Right today. So I still do a little bit of part-time work as a primary school teacher,
Yes.
as a substitute teacher. Really enjoy it, going into the classroom. But
Yep.
today I was teaching my son in his
Yes.
classroom,
Oh
my
my gosh.
5-year-old, in it's called junior infants in Ireland. So I
Yes.
was his teacher for the day. He was so excited. Like, I mean, he was like it was Christmas morning. He's been excited all evening. Um,
Amazing.
Now, here's the thing. I actually have had a really busy schedule this week, and I turned down work. I said no to work today in a different school because I had this appointment with you, and I was like, that I
Thank
was
you.
gonna be talking to you. So I was like, no, I don't want to be push. I don't go into pushing. But the
Yes.
opportunity came to teach in my son Conan's class, which is a shorter day because he's in junior infants. And
Okay.
also the school is only 5 minutes from where I live. So it
Yes.
was just like done pat back. So I had 2 hours before this call to manage my energy or whatever, to relax basically.
Yes.
But because I've been doing the energy management every day, because I'm aware of my energy better, I was able to show up today in the classroom and to also show up for this call really centered and grounded in a way that I just wouldn't have done a year or two ago before. I would have been doing too much and it would have been stressful. And it was just such a great day teaching my son today and the other 24 children that were there as well. They were a gorgeous class. It
Oh
was
my
great to see them
gosh.
interacting. I mean, I've always worked in education of some sort, but actually to teach your own child, it's always like, I wonder would that ever happen? It actually was today. So it's a real life example of I'm so grateful for the tools you have, like the OFTU, the order form to the universe. I would have done
Yes.
that this morning, setting up exactly how I want my day to go. I don't
Excellent.
want it to be, I want to have a really good day in the classroom, but I want to also have a space between the classroom and between doing the call with you. I want to, all of that I wouldn't have had those tools 2 years
Right.
ago. And it's taking something that could have been really stressful and switching it to becoming something really magical.
Amazing,
And
right?
it was a magical day
Amazing.
for my son too.
Amazing. Amazing. I love this story so much. And I really think it is such a beautiful example and demonstration of, as you said, without the teachings and the tools, and so many highly sensitives, they spend the majority of their time just like in this ball of anxiety and overwhelm and overstimulation. And what you've just described is, making decisions, creating the space for yourself, being able to say yes to both, and this is a memory that your son is going to have for like his whole life, like how you were
Yeah,
able to show up for him and like be in that classroom and like be in your strengths. Like that's just amazing, Brian. And I'm like
yeah.
totally getting emotional because it's just everything that the work is about. So thank you for sharing that.
No, I appreciate it because I appreciate the work so much because for me, I just know I would have managed that differently 2 years ago. I just
Yeah,
know it would have been.
I know it. So, what would you have to say to somebody who's listening and wanting to have a lot of what you're describing, but really doubting that it's available for them? What would you share?
Well, first thing I would say, if you resonate with the fact that you might be highly sensitive, for example, and if it really kind of starts to make sense to you, yeah, I think I'm highly sensitive. There's huge, massive, life-changing benefit in, first of all, owning that, and secondly, doing the work that say you've provided that's very specifically for a highly sensitive nervous system. It's just such specific training.
Yes.
Um, so I think I'm answering your question. Could you just repeat your question again, just so I'm clear? 'Cause I think it was
Yeah,
a
for
little bit.
sure. Yeah,
It's a bit.
no worries. Like, just if somebody's listening to you and they're like, yeah, well, that's great. And Brian was able to do it, but I don't think I would ever be able to do it. What advice would you give them?
Oh, okay. Well, I would say anybody can do it. It's the willingness to do it, and it's for me, willingness is like something that's mentioned a lot in your program.
Yes.
It's mentioned a lot in A Course in Miracles.
Yes.
And it's a different quality of a word, willingness, to, other words where I have to do something, or it's just have a little chink of willingness to show up differently, to show up and to engage with process.
Beautiful.
And these are all phrases that you can kind of use, and they can seem, after a while, it's like, oh, I've heard that, engage with, but when you really are doing it,
right,
it's so different to be in the process. It makes so much more sense to you because you internalize it. So it's like words become, more embodied in you. Like, but that willingness, like for me, I'll just give an example of willingness. I've always wanted to write, like as in writing has always been this thing, it's like whisper in the back of my head, you like writing, do a bit more writing. I'd write a poem here or a poem there, and then I wouldn't write again. And it was always procrastination, or, you should be writing more and all of this. And then just about, 6 months ago, I just said to myself, through all the trainings I've been getting with you, I've just, are you willing to just write for 10 minutes a day?
Ooh.
Are you willing just to do that much?
Yes.
How about that? And I started with that, and I've been doing 10 minutes a day, and the amount of stuff that can come out with just that little bit of willingness.
Yes.
And it's not like, and also not having to say, I'm going to write 4 hours every day and I'm going to have a novel written in 6 months. It's like, no, just be willing and then go with that energy. It's a different way of looking at things.
So
anybody, to answer your question, like anybody can transform with the specific kind of tools that you're providing and the program. Anybody, but it is the willingness to consistently show up and do it.
Yes.
And it's the willingness prior to that to own the fact that you're highly sensitive,
Yes.
Because that's the big thing for me at the very start, was to first of all own that, and then the willingness to put in the work.
Well said. Very, very well said. Brian, where can listeners find out more about you and the amazing work that you're doing in the world as a highly sensitive entrepreneur and leader?
Well, my breath work, so I teach the Buteyko breathing technique, but also I'm, interested in all of the ideas of the breath. And so my website is called www.yourbreath.ie. So it's www.yourbreath.ie. yourbreath.ie.
Beautiful. Awesome.
And I mentioned earlier on that I was working a business with my partner, Lauren.
Yes.
And that is in the area of personal development and personal growth, which is something I'm really, as I've shared in this call, very passionate about. And that website, I'm on that website as well. But Lauren is in charge of that business right now, because I've learned to focus my energy down for now anyway, on the breathing work. And that website is www.reachyourpersonalbest.com.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Definitely recommend visiting both of those websites, and at www.yourbreath.ie, you will also find links to Brian's YouTube channel and his Facebook group. And I definitely recommend checking those out, and especially the videos that Brian has created. They're really powerful. And Brian, you're an amazing facilitator. So those videos are such a service. And again, we'll make sure that those links are easy for listeners to access as well. Thank you so much for this time, Brian. Thank you so much for your trust in me, your trust in the program and the teachings and the tools, and for being willing to share your story, and for leading the way, especially for other highly sensitive males. I'm really grateful for all of it.
Thank you, Heather. It's been really nice connecting with you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And for those of you who are listening, thank you so much. And until next time.
Thank you for being a part of this Business Miracles podcast episode and for beginning to dip your toe into the journey of highly sensitive leadership training. If you are ready to truly use your sensitivities as strengths in all parts of your work and life, I invite you to connect for a one-on-one chat. You will experience being deeply listened to, and together we'll get a sense of whether the highly sensitive leadership training programs are the best next step for you and your highly sensitive journey at this time. Just go to www.claritycall.com to schedule a conversation. We so look forward to connecting with you. Talk to you soon.